Good morning, everybody. This is Kate, and I am with Cecilia Leskowicz. And
Hi.
hi, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on. This is so exciting.
It's awesome. I'm so glad you said yes. So, the way that I found out about Cecilia is my oldest daughter, Julia, on Instagram had shared something from her Instagram account. And if you don't follow her, go find Missionary of Beauty and follow because what she writes is so encouraging and lovely and beautiful. And I just, I don't know, it's like a breath of fresh air. And so that's how I found her and decided to follow along. And I just, everything she says, and I understand that you recently just got engaged.
Thank
Congratulations.
you.
Oh my
And
goodness.
thank
And
you
tell
for
us,
your lovely words about my Instagram.
it's beautiful. I love following along. Well, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a recent graduate of my master's degree that I just got at Penn State University in flute performance. Both of my degrees are in music. And I currently teach a lot of lovely young piano and flute students. I am a middle school youth minister at my parish. I I sew chapel veils for mass with the small business that I founded during my master's, Ave Maria Veil Co. And my latest venture has been co-founding a nonprofit with my college roommate and dear friend Tara, and it's called the Hildegard Collective. And it's basically our mission is to connect Catholic musicians because being like music students ourselves, even at a Catholic university, we went to Catholic University of America for our undergrad, and we found good Catholic friends in the music department, and there were like several faculty members who were either really faithful Catholics or very devout Christians. But even so, there was a lot of people there who were kind of there for the program and not for the Catholic aspect of the university. And then when we both went our separate ways, she went to Dublin, Ireland to go pursue a master's in musicology, and then I went to Penn State. Um, we just really saw firsthand how lonely it can be as a practicing Catholic in the field of music. I think, a lot of people tend to think of classical music as very like, innocent and like wholesome. And there are a lot of people in the industry who are anything but. And it's very hard to, keep your faith in your morals. Um, and continue pursuing a relationship with Christ, especially on top of, that aspect of it, that your schedule is crazy as a musician. A lot of times you're going to be keeping odd hours. Even if you're teaching music in a school, like you'll have, a lot of after school stuff. And then if you want to be pursuing more performance related things, your evenings are all booked with performances and
Right.
rehearsals. And so it can
Yeah.
be very difficult to find community, even community with other fellow Catholics who aren't musicians, because the schedules are just so bizarre. So we saw this need and we decided to co-found a nonprofit together to kind of answer that. And so it's been slow going a bit, but we're going to be having an online platform for connection to be launching soon, hopefully by the end of the spring. And we'd like to offer like in-person retreats and stuff like that so that people can connect on a more local level as well. But right now we have some free resources out. We have a blog that we semi-regularly update and a podcast called the Little Sparks Podcast, where we talk about pretty much anything where faith and music intersect. We wrapped up our first season in December and we're in the middle of recording season two. Season two is a lot about beauty in it, and we're going to have an episode on Saint Cecilia, and we have some really cool guest interviews with people who are in the field, and also a couple people who aren't in the field of music but really appreciate it and have a unique perspective to offer on some various topics that we're really excited about. So,
Oh, that's so exciting. That's
yeah.
so exciting. when I lived in Arizona, I was part of our praise and worship team, and
That's amazing.
it was really, really special. And I learned so much about music in the mass as opposed to
Mm,
just, maybe performance-based music, and it
yeah.
was it was such a blessing. I miss it.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I teach CCD on Sunday mornings, so I'm not able to play for mass as much as I used to, but every time I get a chance to be able to, play my flute and, add it to the beauty of the mass and point people towards Christ with the
Yes,
music I'm making is just such a gift. It's like nothing else.
it's
So,
true. It's true.
yeah.
It's really special. I think for me, that's the way that I feel closest, um, to Christ is when I'm worshiping Him in music. There's
Mm,
something about that it my mind cannot be distracted when I'm singing because 'cause I'm just all there,
that's
instead of if I'm sitting quietly, I have a really hard time, um, focusing and, um, making sure my mind doesn't wander, but when I'm singing, it's like, there's no wandering.
oh, that's so beautiful. I heard a quote once. I don't know if this is, theologically accurate or anything, but I heard this quote once that like music is like the only thing that's going to be like that it will exist in heaven in its form as it is like now on earth. I don't know if that's true or not, but I like to think of that sometimes and especially like at mass. I mean, it kind of does make sense because there's like this transcendental aspect to music. It can, you can put into music emotions that you can't speak about
Yeah.
or um, feelings of praise that you can't necessarily speak about. And
Yes.
it's just so beautiful. It's a beautiful gift from God.
Well, and I think about the times like David and,
Mm,
putting the musicians at the front and starting the battle that way, and that's such an interesting I wanna ask him someday about that. Like, what is it about music um, that started, why did you put them at the front? I don't know. Lots of
yeah,
questions.
I think that's so beautiful. I remember going through Bible in a year with Father Mike Schmitz last year and like hearing that and just being like, "Whoa, that's so cool." Like
I know.
I'd never read that part of the Bible before on my own, so just hearing that was so fascinating.
I love that has been one of, my husband and I are listening to it together, and, it's taken us a lot longer than a year, but, we're going through it. We're gonna get through it. But it's
You got this.
absolutely lovely. I his insight and everything that I've learned, um, I grew up in a small Baptist private school, and we, talked about the Bible a lot and,
Yeah.
memorized scripture, and it's so wonderful to know that the more I read it over and over, something new is revealed, and then especially with Father Mike's insight, uh, what gets me is the connections between the Old Testament and the New Testament. That
Yes. Oh my goodness.
blows me away, things I've never heard before. So, well, I
Likewise.
guess we should talk about why we're here today.
Yeah.
So, I cannot wait to hear I have some guesses, but I can't wait to hear what saint it is that you, have tripped over, in your life.
Well, I think, there are actually 2 main ones that I've been tripping over. Maybe 3 if you count Saint Hildegard, but that's a longer story. I think the 2 main ones that I've tripped over the most in my life are first and foremost Saint Anthony of Padua. He is my bestie, my all-time saint bestie. He is there for me so consistently, and my devotion to him goes all the way back to high school. Um, and the other one is Saint Elizabeth of the Trinity, who has showed up in more subtle ways in my life over the last I would say probably about 3 or 4 years. She's kind of made herself known more subtly than Saint Anthony, but, in equally beautiful ways.
That is so beautiful. I'm excited because I already feel so connected to you. So St. Anthony of Padua is um my daughter's confirmation saint,
Oh,
and
that's so cool.
Saint Elizabeth of the Trinity. Claire Dwyer is one of my dear friends, and she just wrote a book about Saint Elizabeth of the Trinity. It's
Hey, what is it called?
This Present Paradise.
I just got that book in the mail a few weeks
Oh
ago.
my goodness. Well, it's amazing. I
I'm so
can't wait for you
excited
to
to
read
read
it.
it. Oh, this is so exciting. That's
I
amazing.
know. I know. Okay, so tell us about it. I can't wait to hear. This is so exciting.
All right, which one do you want me to start with? St. Anthony
Either
or
one, whatever you feel led to.
All right, I'll start with St. Anthony. So, I one thing about me is that I have suffered 14 concussions. I am not
My
athletic. It's
goodness.
all like freak accidents. Like I fell off a swing. I was getting my brother's bike down from the garage ceiling and it slipped out of my hands and bounced off my head. Like stuff like that, you
Oh
know?
my
Very
goodness.
accident prone. And thankfully like the Lord's been so good. I have had a few MRIs done over the years and have they found no brain damage really, which is like a huge gift. Um and I don't really notice, at this point, I don't notice too many lingering side effects, except for one that has been kind of consistent for a while, and that is like my memory is not great, and like it stems back to really like in high school. I think is when I first started to really notice my memory not being so great, and so I would ask Saint Anthony to help me find things constantly.
Yes.
There was one time where I couldn't find my flute. Like I had misplaced my flute and I didn't know where it was for like 3 days and I didn't want to tell my parents because it was expensive and like I was
Sure.
like how do you lose a flute? You know, like that's something I play like almost every day, you know? And so I ended up finding it 3 days later behind a piano in a practice room in my high school. I don't know, I don't remember putting it there or anything, but it was there. And it was St. Anthony's intercession. Like for 3 days, I was just like, St. Anthony, please help me. St. Anthony, please help me, you know?
Yes.
So he like, especially at that moment, I was just like, you're my bestie. Like you're it, you know? And that relationship with him continued into college. Where he continued to help me find little things, you know, like my dorm keys and, you know, my student ID that I needed to swipe into the cafeteria. um, but I started to, my devotion to him grew, I started to realize that you can turn anything into a find statement. Like I was
Yes.
like, he's a saint. Like I'm not just limited to asking him for where to help tell me where my keys are, you know, and stuff like that. So during my sophomore year of college, I was very intensely focused on wanting to be an orchestral flutist. And I was practicing constantly in rehearsal constantly. My social life consisted of my two roommates and, you know, the calls I would make to my mom like 4 times a week. My mom and I are like
Yes.
besties. But that was it. That was really it. And I was feeling that there was this aspect of my life that was missing. And I could tell that what I really needed at that time was a friend who loved Jesus and music in the same way that I did. Both of my roommates were music majors, but one did musical theater, which I really was not a big fan of, and the other did she was more focused on like songwriting and stuff, which was also super cool, but like not really where my niche was at all. You know, I was a classical flute player. And so within a month, I ended up finding um who's now one of my best friends, the one who I co-founded the Hildegard Collective with, my friend Tara McDermott, and she we were in a Bible study together in like the School of Music that I was co-running with one of my roommates. Um, and even though we had been in music school together for like a year and a half at this point, Tara and I had not really talked at all. Like she
Right.
ran in totally different circles than me. She was a classical vocal performance major, but had so she like hung out a lot with the vocal performance majors who like we didn't like, you know, we weren't on the same in the same classes and stuff like that, except for like maybe one that everybody had to take, sort of thing. So our paths really hadn't crossed. And then one night after the Bible study, she came up to me and was like, "Hey, I heard you were looking at rooms in the dorm that I'm currently in, which was right next to the School of Music, which would have been very convenient. And she was like, if you want to like come see what it's like before you apply for dorms for next year, like you can come over and take a look." So I was like, "Oh, thanks. Yeah, sure. I'll take you up on that sometime." And I went down to the basement to practice, and I was down there and I get a text from this number that I don't know. And it's Tara. And she's like, "I heard you practicing downstairs. Like, if you want to like stop by, like on your way back to your dorm, if you have time, like I have some time tonight, to like show you it quickly." So I was like, "Okay." So I went over there at about 11:30 p.m. and ended up on her couch until 3:30 a.m.
Oh,
talking.
wow.
Like, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, St. Anthony came through yet again. He found
Yes.
me a friend." And we ended up becoming really close friends. We were college roommates our senior year. And now to this day, like she's one of my bridesmaids for my wedding. And it's been just such a beautiful friendship. And
Oh, that's
it
fantastic.
was so clearly St. Anthony's intercession right there.
Yes.
And as it turns out, she also had been praying for someone who loved Jesus and music the way that she did. So it was just such a God moment, such a St. Anthony moment. And yeah, St. Anthony to this day continues to be like my best friend. I'll lose things, or my fiance will be like, "Where did I put my phone?" And like he'll be looking everywhere and I'm like, "St. Anthony, where is his phone?" And then I'm like, "There it is."
Oh my
you know,
goodness.
like he's just, yeah, we're besties. He's
I
so good.
love what you said about how you can turn anything into a find statement. And I feel like it's so similar to our relationship with Christ as we progress as, into adulthood um that when we're young, we really look to him for very almost simple things.
Yeah.
And then as we get older, we start turning to him for the more complex things and the bigger things and the
Mm.
deeper things and the relationship things. And it's like I feel like St. Anthony really can mirrors that for us. It's such a
Yeah.
great example.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool, like, outlook on that I hadn't really ever thought about. It does. It so beautifully mirrors it.
Yeah, I love it. I don't know. I had never thought about how St. Anthony, um, how there's so many things that you can ask him to find,
Yeah.
lost relationships, lost that's my big one is if I feel like I've had a loss in a relationship and he comes through every time, every time.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Oh my
I think I
goodness.
found out recently he's the patron saint of lost souls,
Oh,
specifically.
wow.
And, like, all we know about him is to ask him to help us find our keys, like, his intercession is so much more powerful than just finding us our keys. Like,
Yes.
I think he's right up there with, St. Jude and St. Rita, the patrons of impossible causes, he's the
Wow.
patron of lost souls. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's so special. That's so special. Okay. Okay, tell me about Saint Elizabeth of the Trinity.
St. Elizabeth of the Trinity has shown up in, like I said, a lot more subtle ways, but equally as powerful. She saint stalked me for about a year and a half and I ignored her, like straight up ignored her. I was like, "Yeah, I'll get to you at some point." But she was just saint stalking me for about a year and a half. And then in the summer of 2021, I went to the Given Institute. Are you familiar with it at all?
I'm not. No.
So it's this leadership forum for young Catholic women. And you go there and they really just form you as a woman, like, steeped in the feminine genius. What does feminine leadership look like opposed to
Wow.
masculine leadership? It's so, so beautiful. And in the year that follows attending their summer forum, you are paired with a mentor. You have an action plan to meet like some need, whether it's large or small. Like it can be a lot of women, like I know, did things like, start a small group in their parish because there wasn't any, or like one
Wow.
of the ladies I met there did some work with her campus ministry to start a ministry for the elderly because there was a nursing home right near the campus. So you can do things like that. But then there are also some like much larger projects that come out of it. And actually, the Hildegard Collective was my action plan. So you go through the following year and you apply kind of what you learned at the forum in terms of feminine leadership to your action plan. It's really, really beautiful. And so I attended it that year. And we were all assigned a small group, and each small group was named after a different female saint. And I ended up being in the Saint Elizabeth of the Trinity group. And I was just like, interesting, you really are stalking me, aren't you? And then, as it turns out, the next day, these two nuns, there's a lot of nuns that attend this and who are mentors and stuff. And these two nuns came up to me and they were like, "You're our missing girl." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "You're supposed to be in St. Elizabeth Ann Seton." And I was like, "Oh." But at that point, I'd clicked with my small group and I was like, "I'm going to stay with them," even though they were on a totally different track than me. They were all like the Catholic professional track. I was entrepreneurial track. They're like different tracks you can go on.
Oh my goodness.
And I was just like, at this point, these girls are wonderful. I want to stay over here with these ladies. So they were like, "Yeah, no, we totally get it." It was just like this just little like error someone made with, slipping the
Yes.
wrong piece of paper in the back of my name tag. Um, that led me to be in this St. Elizabeth of the Trinity group. And so I was like, "Okay, St. Elizabeth, I will pay attention to you now." And the group ended up growing really close together. One of our mentors was a religious sister with SOLT, and she was making her final vows 3 weeks later and invited us
Oh
to
my
come down.
goodness.
And we all ended up going to Corpus Christi. We were all from the East
Oh,
Coast. We all ended up like booking plane tickets and flying down to Corpus Christi for like the weekend to go for her final vows. And it was just so beautiful.
wow.
And so then after that, I came home and I was just like, "Man, okay, St. Elizabeth, you've given me this beautiful gift of sisterhood. I really need to learn more about you."
Yes.
And I mentioned this offhandedly to my mom one day, and she was like, "Oh, I have like the first volume of like her writings. You want to check it out?" And I was like, "Sure." So I started reading it, and it started out with her biography, and as it turns out, she was trained as a classical pianist in France. She was this like French conservatory trained pianist who won all these prizes and was well on her way to being established as a reputable piano teacher. Um, Her father had died when she was young, so her mom was really trying to make sure that her and her sister were able to support themselves if they couldn't find husbands. It was the late 1800s in France. You know, so
Wow.
she ended up, though, giving up the piano to go be a Carmelite nun in Dijon, France.
Mhm, mhm.
And then she ended up dying about 5 years later from Addison's disease because there wasn't a cure for it. But her writings are just so incredibly profound. A lot of them are to her sister, and her sister ended up being a mother of 9 children. And at the time, she had two little ones. And so a lot of St. Elizabeth's letters to her sister are just all these like practical things for her to continue developing an interior life with the Lord, and how like this is not just for people in convents and monasteries. This isn't just for the priest and religious. This is for the lay people too. She's very similar to Saint Therese in that aspect, but maybe a little bit less melancholy. I think Saint Elizabeth of the Trinity was not nearly as like intense as
Yes, yeah.
Saint Therese, but her work is equally as profound and impactful.
Oh,
Um,
that's so beautiful.
yeah, she's just very gently shown up in my life, and that was very timely too when I ended up starting to read her because the Lord wanted to take me deeper in my interior life with Him, and her work really was influential in helping me to go deeper. So,
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. There is something about her. I feel like God is really calling her to the forefront of so many of our minds that it
mhm.
makes me wonder what in her writing is for now? What in her writing is for this time and this place and these battles that we're facing. Um, I don't know. There's
I do
something.
have one theory on that
Oh,
actually.
yeah?
About that too, like, why is the Lord bringing her to the forefront? Because you're not the only person that I've heard say this, I've heard other people say this too. I do wonder if it has everything to do with, the interior life and how it's for everybody. We live in such a busy, noisy
Yes.
world, and it's so hard to find silence. It's so hard to go deeper into our interior lives because there's just so much coming at us all the time, whether it's
Yes.
our own lives with, busy schedules or, we look on our phones, maybe to get us distracted from our busy lives and we're bombarded by busyness there too.
Yes.
And I do wonder if maybe part of the reason why the Lord is bringing her to the forefront is because of that, to help us develop in our interior lives. Like she wants to lead us deeper, kind of almost like an image of like a torchbearer, like in the dark, just like came to mind, like just leading the way.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think there's something to that because it's definitely an age of distraction.
It is
Yeah.
100%. And it's so tragic.
Mhm. Mhm. I know that my best days are the days that I sit in silence with him. Even, maybe the Blessed Sacrament isn't even exposed, but just to be there with the tabernacle is just there's something so special. And those are the days that I think, "Oh my goodness, do I have time for this? I've got so much to do." And then it's like the Lord just stretches those hours and I get everything done and my thinking is very clear and it's very special. I agree
Yeah,
with you.
it's the best feeling.
It
I'm trying
is.
to remember which saint said this, but it's that one quote that's like, have half an hour meditation every day, except when you're busy, then an hour. I don't
Yes.
remember who it
Oh,
was.
I don't either. I don't
I
remember who
feel like
that
it was my brain is telling me it was either St. Francis de Sales, Mother Teresa, or Fulton Sheen, and I'm not sure which one it was, and it might not have been any of them, but that's
I know. My first guess was Francis de Sales, but now and the fact that we both said it, I'm like, but
maybe
I'll look
it
it up.
is.
I'll put it in the show notes. That way we'll all
Solid.
know.
Of the answer to the mystery quote.
Right. Well, thank you so, so much for these two beautiful saints. If I had to guess, I would have said Saint Cecilia or Saint Hildegard, and I love that you brought us Saint Anthony of Padua and Saint Elizabeth of the Trinity. I think, oh, so beautiful, so beautiful. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for your time, and everybody, be sure go look her up on Instagram, Missionary of Beauty, and be inspired. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for having me on. This was wonderful.
It was great. Thank you. Hi, thank you so much for joining us for Tripping Over the Saints. I hope you enjoyed meeting our new friend, and I cannot wait to introduce you to more new friends. If you would like to become a patron of this podcast, we would love for you to join in at Patreon. The donations you make go directly to cover the hosting, technical support, and donations we make to our speakers and podcasters and missionaries that come on the show to introduce us to someone new. Have a great day, and I cannot wait to talk to you again.